Okay. Good morning and a very hearty welcome to Theodicy class. So we have already given a general introduction and then we said our preferred categories are presence, absence, and we no longer cling on to existence, non-existence categories. And then we said, how are we to see absence, presence? And that we have analyzed a little bit. Well, in the absence there is a presence, in the presence there is the absence, therefore they are the more appropriate or the preferred categories to talk for a meaningful talk, God talk. Yes, that we finished. And then we entered into the third section called godlessness and atheism. Godlessness and atheism. Okay, we defined what is godlessness and we defined also atheism. Godlessness, we said, yes, I recap it precisely. We are going to start with it, or we are going to analyze it, or we are going to talk about the different types of godlessness and atheism. Therefore, we recap it again, give the definition. What is godlessness? Godlessness is a practical way of living. A practical way of living without acknowledging God. A practical. In other words, yes, the person who approves this theory, well, he is not a valueless person. He is a person with values. He loves others and he cares for others and all that. But then, regarding, when talking about God, they say, well, we can without. See, that is something very important. Now, don't think that you can live without God. We are not saying that. But then, well, we are exposing a theory. And then, what is atheism? Atheism is the theoretical articulation of this practical living. In other words, you give a theory for it. So, in other words, what is a practical way of living, and atheism is the theoretical formulation of this practical way of living. So, you as a philosophy students, you must be able to distinguish between those who live the godlessness way or godless man is not going to define the non-existence of God. He is not bothered. He is not at all concerned. But then atheism is the theoretical articulation. Why at all? And now afterwards we analyzed it. How are these terminologies different from believe in God? Yeah, because believe in God and godlessness and atheism. How are they? We analyzed. That was in the last class. Well, you will very well understand. Well, when we started critically analyzing, we found that the distinction between the atheist and the godless on the one side and the believer on the other side, that distinction is not very thin, very thick. In other words, you cannot simply separate a group of people as godless and atheist and others are theist or believers believing in God. Why? Well, the believer is also living with the values of being upheld by godless man. One thing. Secondly, sometimes the believer also lives as if, God is existing. In other words, there are moments wherein we find also, yes, the believer as well as the godless and atheist moving in the same track. And finally, we concluded that yes, godlessness and atheism is a situational one. All that was explained and dictated. So it's a situational one, a contextual one. In other words, you take less of godness, less of godness. So in other words, in some particular situations, they are not able to find values, God. Therefore, yes, it's called godless. And then atheism means no to. So in other words, atheism and godlessness are not simply something which is only a negation of what? Yes, believe in God. That is how we said. And now, finally, we gave also a little reflection about it and concluded. And now we are going to see types of godlessness and atheism. And then finally we said, we cannot simply underestimate this one. Why? Well, they have certain reasons for holding their position. And we are going to slowly enter into those positions. Okay? That is by way of general introduction, which will not be dictated because that is the gist of, sum and substance of what we had already seen in the previous 3 classes. Okay, and now types of godlessness. Types of godlessness and atheism. 3, 1. That is scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism. Scientific and aristocratic. Okay, types of 3, 1, 1. Yes, scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism. Yes. The first point, scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism. Scientific, aristocratic. Yes. In one sentence we can simply say, science does not presuppose anything. Science is observation, verification and prediction, and goes on observing the law-like functioning of realities and go on interpreting. The scientific method is initiated by Francis Bacon. You know, you studied already in your second year with observation, verification and prediction. Not deductive method, but rather inductive method. Deductive is deducing from one to the other. But this one, observation, verification, prediction, inductive. So from the child, from the law-like functioning of a reality, you observe it, you formulate theory, and you predict it. That's all. So it is scientific. In other words, science does not presuppose anything. Therefore, yes, if science is everything is coming from God, well then the investigation is blocked. That's the thing. Aristocratic, yes, it is of the elite group. And then we say we cannot simply underestimate this position. Science has its own reason. And then the elite is not simply ordinary people, the elite group, the educated group. Yes, they have their own conclusions. Now, number of scientists, yes, they believe in God. Why? Yes, when they go into the mystery of nature, yes, cosmology, and how the cosmos is composed of, the functioning of cosmos, and they say, well, there is a super intelligence behind this. That is there. Therefore, this is scientific and aristocratic, yes, godlessness and atheism. It's not simply a denial of God, but rather in order to find truth, yes, in order to come to the reality with all its nakedness, truthfulness, well, they don't start with a presupposition. Simply, they go on working. So that is what is called scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism. Okay. Now you will find the notes, it will be clear. Okay. These are means scientific and aristocratic, godlessness and atheism. These are attempts to free man from the bondage of mythical and psychological interpretation. Okay. So in other words, mythical, you know what it is. Mythical and psychological interpretation. So, to free man from, humanity from mythical interpretation of reality, psychological interpretation of reality, interpretation. Yes, we do not know, we are going on interpreting only. We are not able to say what is the truth. Therefore, in order to free humanity from mythical, yes, what is mythical? Yes, how in Indian philosophy, in the first year you studied how the world originated. Yes, you know it, I don't have to repeat. Yes, in the ancient, early Greek philosophy, how things came into existence, you know. Yes, this is more of mythical. And then there are also psychological interpretations. But then, yes, scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism, yes, is trying to free humanity from the mythical interpretation. And now let me ask you, Theodicy, now you know about man, about world and God, you are studying. Now do you simply accept as 100% true what the mythical interpretation given by the most ancient Indian philosophers or the most ancient Western philosophers? Yeah, you laugh at it because it looks like story. Yes, but then at that time there was a mythical way, story telling. Yes, in the story there is truth, but what we need only the truth, not the story. Okay, so in order to free humanity from mythical and psychological interpretation, well, this scientific and aristocratic godlessness takes a stand. In other words, God is not the starting point. That's the point. They simply start studying the phenomena and going around. Okay. To free man from the bondage of mythical and psychological interpretation, this kind of atheism actually started at the intellectual and scientific level. Yes, intellectual and scientific level. Yes, it's not simply ordinary people's activity, it is of the intelligent people's activity. Okay, intellectual and scientific level, and they continue to be at the same level, and we may say they remain as a tendency of the elite. Elite means, yes, educated group. So in other words, it's not the ordinary granny in the village who is going to talk about God's existence and non-existence or scientific way. But then they have, the farmers, they have their way. But then, well, this is something systematic and scientific. Okay, it is called elite. Hence, we call it aristocratic. Yes. Hence, we call it also aristocratic. So that is what is one point. Now, it is emerging from serious and restless search for the unknown. Yes, that's the thing. If we start with God, then already presupposition has come. Now, cosmology is entering into the cosmos, into the unknown, without any presupposition, to know the mystery of nature. Therefore, well, this is something very important. We are in search of the unknown. Yes, there are yet things to be known. Therefore, without any presupposition, yes, we go. In other words, the mind is freed of all its prejudices. Okay, if you borrow a terminology from David Hume. Okay. But remains at the factual level. Okay, going into the unknown from the factual level. So we go step by step. The scientific atheism tries to give an ultimate answer to the question of origins from an evolutionary point of view. Evolutionary point of view. So, no longer God as the starting point, but rather evolution. What is theory of evolution? Yes, the evolution started, yes, evolving of reality started millions of years ago. In cosmology, you will have a better understanding. Yes, already videos are uploaded for you. Go into, then you can connect it. Yes, millions. And then, yes, human beings are still several years later. Several years means several hundreds of years, thousands of years later. Therefore, well, not simply God as the starting point, but then evolutionary point of view, they look at the nature. They study the unknown, yes, from the evolutionary point of view. Well, we are going to exposing what is the scientific and evolutionary process and evolutionary ethics, godlessness and aristocratic and scientific godlessness. We are exposing and then we are going to evaluate it. Okay. Evolutionary point of view. Consequently, they challenge the various theories of the creation, emanation, and even several pantheistic explanations of God and world. In other words, the scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism call into question different accounts of creation, yes, different explanation given for the existence of the world and humanity. Okay. Consequently, they challenge the various theories of the creation, emanation, and even the several pantheistic explanations of God and of world. For them, an explanation to the origins should be origin of the world, origin of humanity. Yes, for them, an explanation to the origins should be empirically investigated and understood. So, any explanation should be empirically verifiable. Yes, we must be able to analyze and find it out. That's the thing. For them, any explanation, an explanation to the origin should be empirically investigated and understood in a progressive and evolutionary way. Not that all of a sudden it happened, no. Yes, well, that is why evolution is telling that in the beginning was this one, that started moving forward and evolution took place and to the next stage and the next stage and it goes on. Clear? Not simply and abruptly starting. Yes. Okay. Consequently, there is a clear denial of God who is the creator. So, in other words, in scientific and aristocratic godlessness, the atheism, well, the denial of, not denial of God, denial of God as the creator of everything. Rather, they hold on to the theory of evolution. So, this is what is called scientific and aristocratic godlessness. Okay? Yes. So, this is aimed at freeing humanity from mythical and psychological interpretation. Clear? Yes, they search for an intellectual and scientific way. Clear? Yes, they look at whole of reality from an evolutionary point of view, and thereby we call it also the scientific and aristocratic godlessness atheism as a product of thinking of elite group, and finally we say scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism denies God as the creator of the world. But they accept only the evolutionary point, and that is also not simply from an abrupt, but rather, yes, all that it precedes should be explained by the preceding one, and that is what is called, yes, aristocratic and scientific godlessness. Now, we are going to analyze it because as students of Theodicy, yes, it's up to us also to reflect what is all about the scientific and aristocratic godlessness. So, the theory is exposed and now we are going to estimate the worth of it. Clear? Now, yes, scientific and aristocratic godlessness. Yes, now, well, we are going to make an evaluation of it. Is there something truth in what they say? Or is it only a kind of, what is that? Yes, another interpretation or simply something to escape from what is essence. Clear? What is essential. Therefore, yes. Now, 3, 1, 1, 1. Certain observations. So, in other words, this is the theory, what is scientific and aristocratic godlessness. And now, after having exposed it, we are going to just analyze it. In other words, well, 3, 1, 1, 1, yes, certain observations. We take this kind of an approach because when you study, when you write your paper also, you need to simply don't write Brahman, Brahman is Atman, Atman is Brahman, Brahman is that, this and all. No. But you need to, yes, scientifically, systematically, with the help of the logic you studied in your second year, you to make divisions, subdivisions. So, see, look at, we said about, yes, Theodicy, introduce the theme, introduction. Then we said, well, the preferred category to talk about a meaningful talk God, a meaningful God talk is not existence and non-existence, but rather, yes, simply absence, presence. And then we exposed what is absence, presence. And then we come to know that in the absence there is also presence and all. Therefore, we introduced godlessness and atheism. What is godlessness and atheism? And then we connected it with our faith, believe in God. And then we said how far it is different, how are they connected. And we said a Christian is a believer is a one who is in the making, is not a finished product. So that is how we proceed. And then we entered into godlessness and atheism, types of them. First one we said, yes, we are not simply going to swallow it, but we are going to analyze it. Therefore, certain observations. Well, what are the observations? The first one, don't underestimate. Don't underestimate. Yes, what do you mean by don't underestimate? Don't simply sideline it. What is it called? Godlessness. We know them, let them go. No. Don't underestimate. There is something very seriously that we need to think about in what they talk about in scientific and aristocratic godlessness. So, in other words, don't underestimate. Well, I will give you estimate and underestimate meaning for it. At the time of COVID, the month of March, we are not siding with anyone, but for your reflection. Yes. Rahul Gandhi, in the between, said it's going to set up a terrible setback. It is going to have a terrible setback for our economy. People will suffer. Ordinary businessmen will lose their job. Farmers will suffer. And all that, the migrant community. At that time, many were fooling him. They underestimated him. Now, after five months, our entire world is telling, yes, he was right. Yes. One world leader who is supposed to be controlling the entire world, he said, the secretary presented on the table 4 times the report about COVID. We are not worried about it. We are worried about only development. Underestimated. Therefore, we have been told not to underestimate it. Clear? Don't underestimate it. Observation. So please don't underestimate, because there is certain truth being said by them, because the point of departure, or the starting point is for scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism is no longer God. But for a theist, for a believer, it's God. Now, they take a starting point other than God in scientific and aristocratic one. Precisely, they want to know the mystery. They want to know the truth. You cannot call them non-believers. Therefore, there is some truth in what they say. Therefore, don't underestimate. That's the point. I hope my gentlemen understand what I am talking about. Therefore, yes, don't underestimate. Okay. Science and scientific godlessness cannot be underestimated because of 2 reasons. Yes. First of all, in the first place, it is very much influencing religion and man's God experience. Yes, it is very much influencing, yes, believers' God experience. Yes. There's something very, very interesting. Why? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. In the first place, it is very much influencing religion and man's God experience. You just imagine, yes, in the beginning, Indian philosophy when you studied, well, what was the definition of God? Yes, and that was Neti, Brahman. And then, neither this nor that is Brahman. Why? The ultimate reality cannot be said to be this or that. Why? If you say this, then you are limiting. If you say that is limiting. Therefore, they said, Neti, Brahman. Okay. And then, with that abstract notion, you cannot have a devotion. Therefore, they introduced Saguna Brahma. From Nirguna Brahma, yes, it was not that appealing for the ordinary. Then, Saguna Brahma. Brahma with, yes, Saguna. Positive, yes. Then we said, yes, Brahman is Agasha. Yes, you studied. Recollect all that is, even in Western philosophy. Well, yes, Vayu, in Indian philosophy, why? Vayu is everywhere. Air is everywhere. Agasha is as wide as the, yes. Therefore, we said, God is like. Yes, God is like. Now do you say God is like Agasha? God is like? No. Why? Yes, you have improved a lot with your reflection. Therefore, we are telling, yes, it is this study of scientific study is also helping a man with God experience to move forward with a scientific understanding, more reasonable understanding, more appealing understanding. Therefore, yes, it helps the believer. First point. Okay. In the first place, it is very much influencing religion, that man's God experience. There are several instances where religion has rethought its conceptions on God and has been progressing due to the influence of the knowledge received from the physical and human sciences. So in other words, yes, simply one expression. In every culture you will find, in connection with the courtyard of the king or in the palace, there used to be poets who used to every day praised the king, one of the beautiful expressions was, Mannavendra vilangunnu Chandrane pol ninmukham. Oh, my dear king, your face is shining like the moon. Yes. Now, any secretary or any, yes, this face appreciating people compare any human face to that of moon, because we have already reached in moon and we know moon is full of pits. Follow? You have stopped that comparison. Otherwise, you could hear this one, Mannavendra vilangunnu Chandrane pol ninmukham. Yes, that is stopped. In other words, we are capable of, with the knowledge coming from scientific world, we are also, that is also helping our God experience and our knowledge about God and all that is. The rest we will take it in the next class. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so the first point. And second point is, secondly, science raises question on man's life and destiny, which very often is ignored or overlooked by religion. Follow? So first one, science is helping religion to update its categories. If you use from the modern scientific view, yes, we need to update always our, yes, categories. So science helps the believer to updates his notions or categories about God. Okay. Second one is, well, there is something much more. Science raises question on man's life and destiny, which very often is ignored or overlooked by religion. Yes, science is asking more fundamental questions than that is asked normally by, yes, a believer. That is something also it will be clear as we go. Hence, science and scientific godlessness do contribute for the growth of one's knowledge of God experience. In other words, well, it is something very interesting. Yes, the contributions of science is also helping an ordinary believer to update his God experience, notions about God experience, and then is asking more fundamental questions than that is asked by religion. Therefore, yes, the answers coming from scientific understanding of the world, of humanity, is also helping in some way or other for our growth and development. That is the first one. So in other words, don't underestimate scientific and aristocratic godlessness. And now the second point will be, well, 3, 1, 1, 2. Yes, that is, science presupposes a methodic atheism. Science presupposes a scientific atheism. Presupposes. Science presupposes a methodic atheism. Simple. From the title itself it is clear. Science, the starting point of science is not God. We said it earlier. God is not the starting point. But then a methodic atheism. Atheism is the theoretical formulation of a practical way of living without God. Now, that is what is atheism. We have defined already. We fall back always for the definition of godlessness and atheism. So we said, well, second point is, yes, science presupposes a methodic atheism. In other words, a systematic denial for the sake of searching for the fundamental truth. Now the problem is, we say, suppose if you make a round, all realities are within this round, then what happens? The inquisitive mind doesn't go out. But if you draw an open-ended round, yes, you make a round, but then you make it open. In other words, you don't stop the search. This had become clear for you when Kant spoke about God, knowledge. He put conditions of the possibility of knowledge. Yes, it will be hard a little for you, but you have already seen the Kant. I taught you the Kant. Therefore, conditions of the possibility of knowledge. In order to say that we know something, what are the conditions? Space and time, categories and all. He said, only phenomena we know. Yes, reality is that is in front of us. Reality is beyond, well, we cannot know with this. Therefore, he said, God cannot come with his purview. Therefore, well, we need to have a different approach to God, he said. That is how we saw in Kant. Here too, yes, scientific and aristocratic godlessness presuppose a methodic atheism. In the sense, yeah, they don't presuppose God at all. They say, there is no God. There is no God. We are going to study what is in front of us, the phenomena, and we proceed. Therefore, that is what is called, yes, science has to begin its study and search with the neutralization of God. They don't want to proclaim that we believe in God and all. No, no. In their study of nature, to know the unknown aspects of reality, they simply have a neutral stand. That's the point. So, all right, in order to be objective and honest in its search, takes atheism as a method of starting point of its study. That's the thing. So they don't presuppose anything. Yes, we begin as if, yes, they do not know anything. Scientist is not so much interested in knowing the truth, but rather he is guided by the desire to control and manipulate phenomena. In all religion, yes, believing in God, we find an attempt made by the transcendental applications of the principle of causality, but science does not do so. The scientist is looking for explanation that is valid within the universe and not interested in the causality of the universe. So that's the point. In other words, a neutral stand and then an atheistic position, so that they search cause from within, not from without. That is the point. So these are the 2 points. Well, some more are there, we will be seeing. So scientific and aristocratic godlessness and atheism, we have seen what it is, exposed it, and then we are going with certain observations. First observation is, don't underestimate, we cannot. Second, science presupposes a methodic atheism. The rest we will see it in the next class. Thank you.